Branded globally, relevant locally. A look at how Nokia tackles the challenge of being a truly global brand whilst maintaining a degree of local relevance through audio, a factor which should be very relevant in the world of audio branding. My name is Henry Daw and I work as a principal sound designer for Nokia. We can divide up the content of this case study into four main sections. Number 1, global to local, discussing the challenge of making a global brand relevant on a local level. Number 2, regional ringtones, which is how Nokia tackles the above challenge. This section will be an historical look at Nokia's approach to localizing content. Number 3, user testing and research, how to localize appropriately using research and testing. And number 4, crowdsourcing, a look at Nokia's latest approach to being locally relevant. Let's think of some of the big global brands. An audio identity may or may not come to mind, but as we see more and more global companies focusing efforts on developing their audio identities, the tendency is to follow audio branding and music trends emanating from Europe and the West. Of course, we live in a world which is incredibly diverse, clearly evidenced by the vast differences in music culture. There is simply an amazing array of exciting, vibrant and evocative music around the world, which can be very powerful and symbolic to someone based on where they come from. And so a question that needs to be asked by every global brand is how can we be locally relevant through audio? Of course, the typical approach could be through local marketing. This can be as simple as running a localized marketing campaign using accompanying music that would be appealing for people within that country or region. A global brand can also associate themselves with a local artist as a way of trying to connect with local people. But if we move away from marketing, which within our field is often completely outside our control, it gets to be a bit more challenging, but also more interesting. Let's then look at product sound. In our case, of course, we're talking here about mobile devices. Let's think of this spherical shape as representing Nokia's audio brand. The inner core of the brand is of course the default ringtone, the Nokia tune, which strongly influences also the startup tone, as well as the default alerts, SMS, calendar, clock and email. The primary objective of any global brand when it comes to audio branding should be to establish an audio brand core, an audio identity. It can be argued that only then can a company effectively strategize for localization with audio. Other sounds just outside of this inner core, if you like, also form an important part of the brand. We have all the various system sounds on the devices, such as battery low, keypad sounds, etc. Even further out from the core, you have all the additional ringtones and music tracks that come preloaded on the devices. If you maintain a consistent audio brand, it doesn't necessarily mean the brand has to remain completely rigid. There should still be some flexibility within an audio brand after it's been established. This could allow for code creativity, for example crowdsourcing, or then localization. And as you can see here, this is the area we target for localization, keeping the inner cores of the brand true, whilst offering regional ringtones that would be targeted to people living outside of Europe and the West, further expressing the Nokia brand through audio. Regional ringtones isn't something new for Nokia. Our first offering came way back in 2002, around the time I joined Nokia. Back then we were sourcing original MIDI ringtones from companies based in Southeast Asia. The ringtones were targeted separately for China and also countries within Southeast Asia such as Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia and Vietnam. The Chinese and Southeast Asian MIDI ringtones continued for a few years, until we more or less ceased MIDI production. This coincided with the time when practically all our devices were able to play audio formats. After MIDI production ceased, it was a bit more complex to get the level of quality we required for our regional ringtones. After much searching and assistance from local Nokia sourcing teams, we found a group of companies who we felt matched the standards required, offering locally relevant ringtones whilst reflecting our brand. After much contemplation and research, I determined that our regional ringtones would not necessarily strictly follow local music trends, but more so celebrate local music culture, based predominantly on traditional folk styles. My main philosophy behind the creation of the extensive regional ringtone offering was to try and create a good impression with someone, for example living in China, by providing music that reflects their culture. This draws us away from the dangerous area of trying to keep up with local music trends or be too focused on the younger aged segments. We would require a lot of content during this time, enabling us to vary the product selections each year until we needed to renew everything again. This is when we decided to use crowdsourcing as a means to acquire new and locally relevant regional ringtones. I'll be discussing more about this a bit later on. Before I introduce you to our crowdsourcing project, I think it's important to talk about the testing and research we do around our regional ringtones development. Our primary method for user testing our regional content is through large quantitative user studies within the countries or regions the ringtones were designed for. We'll get popularity ratings for all our regional ringtones, showing us how appreciated the tones actually are. We also test the regional ringtones against our global ringtones. Global ringtones includes all the ringtones that will be preloaded to every region, which are typically based on Western styles. From the studies, we can also get music preferences. For example, what are their favorite genres of music? We can also get insights into the ringtone usage habits of different countries or regions. For example, how often they change their ringtone, do they download, what do they look for in a ringtone, etc. All the information we can gather from these studies can then aid our selections for the regional ringtone offerings. This slide shows some results of a simple popularity test, whereby all the respondents, in this particular study it was 300 people per region, listen to each ringtone we provide for listening, and then rate their favourites, for example the top 3. This particular study wasn't actually testing regional content, it was testing our global catalogue of ringtones at the time, but measuring for differences between the different regions that Nokia is targeting. One interesting insight from this, the traditional ring tone came out as the top-rated ringtone for the UK test, whilst the dancey B-moving ringtone was very popular amongst all other regions, excluding the US where traditional rock ringtone came out on top. All interesting stuff which helps us gain an improved understanding of regional preferences. This extract from a user study done more recently back in 2008 was testing all our new regional content and trying to determine to what extent the content is actually appreciated within each region. To further the insights, we'd be testing the regional content mixed in with the global content, so that we could clearly see how the regional ringtones were faring against the global ringtones. This shows the results for China, which was certainly one of the most pleasing of outcomes in the study. The respondents would first measure how local they felt each tone was, and then proceed to state whether they liked it or not. You can see that all the China-flavoured ringtones are up the top, and majority of them are also well liked, indicated by how far across this graph they are. This extract is from a massive global user preference study where we asked people's habits, preferences and tastes related with their mobile audio personalization. This data, for example, shows the massive differences in music genre preferences. All of this data helps us pick right kind of content for ringtones or preloaded music tracks, and also determine whether we would need to invest more in producing a particular style of ringtone or music track for the future. From all the user studies, we'll also learn about ringtone usage habits. For example, this table, for people from China, shows a summary of the most popular characteristics when using a ringtone, SMS, alarm, and calendar. We can also get some really interesting insights which we perhaps weren't exactly looking for. For example, here, it has been revealed that when downloading or sideloading ringtones, using local artists are most popular in Egypt, followed by China, and then Kenya. Here's another insight which is interesting for us. China tends to have the most involved users, with the Chinese particularly wanting a personal connection to their ringtone. Aside from the large user studies, it's important that we also continually try to teach ourselves. This isn't really work, as of course we all love music, but we need to try and educate ourselves about the different music cultures around the world, the history, where they come from and where they are today. Of course, it's also about listening to lots of music that we perhaps might not normally listen to, music that you have to really find. We can also learn a lot by just talking with local people. So not by reading books or listening to music, but by speaking with people who are from a particular region and who are experts in the local music. Moving on to Nokia's latest approach at being locally relevant, crowdsourcing. Most of you all know that we have already made a major foray into the concept of audio crowdsourcing. Using the ever-growing Audiodraft platform, the Nokia Tune remake was a remarkable success just over a year ago. This crowdsourcing contest really highlighted the benefits of opening up your audio brand to communities. The Nokia Tune Remake contest also highlighted the vast global user base that Nokia has, with over 150 different countries entering. There were many entries that had a local flavour, such as Chinese, Latin, Indian. The Nokia Tune Remake laid an excellent foundation for our latest foray into crowdsourcing, regional ringtones designed by you. The contest was about Nokia reaching out and asking you to create ringtones that reflect and celebrate your local music cultures and styles. Again, we used the Audiodraft platform. And you can see here we had 5 contests running concurrently for 4 weeks, We had a contest each for 5 different regions or countries which correspond with Nokia's sales areas outside of Europe and the West: China, India, Middle East and Africa, Southeast Asia and Pacific, and Latin America. We were looking to select 5 winning ringtones for each region, each receiving $1,500 cash prize, equating to a prize fund of $37,500. In addition, the winning ringtones would form our regional ringtone offering, sitting in the phone as preload for the region they were designed for. The contests were set up a bit differently than the Nokia Tune contest. As well as the contest holders' ratings, we would also be encouraging the Audiodraft community to rate the content. Community ratings would provide insights for when it comes to selecting the winners. It was key to get the PR spot on. It's important, though, to recognise that this is a completely different contest compared to the Nokia Tune remake. For the regional ringtones contest, we were looking for completely original compositions. It was about really connecting with the Audiodraft community, getting them to reflect local music whilst learning how to produce the perfect ringtone for functionality and appropriateness. There were a total of 1,500 entries, pretty evenly spread across all 5 contests. It certainly kept me very busy for 4 weeks. I was attempting to give personal feedback for every single entry. There were also a total of 474 sound designers, which tells you that several people were submitting far more than one entry. Not only that, it was very common for people to submit to more than one contest. Another interesting stat is that there were 30% of people entering to the India contest from within India, which was very pleasing. This shows a strong passion for not only Indian music culture, but also a passion for the Nokia brand. And here finally are some of the winning entries for you to listen to. You can also preview them all in full from the Audiodraft website. In addition, all 25 winning entries have been made available for everyone to freely download from the Nokia store, a platform which has been valuable for getting our ringtones out to everyone. To this point, we have had over 40 million downloads of all our ringtones from the Nokia store. And since all 25 regional ringtones were put up 3 months ago, we've had over 2 million downloads. Thank you.